The holiday season is stressful for many people, and the added stress can trigger an abuser and make abuse more likely to happen. Since Thanksgiving is upon us and Christmas is just on its heels, I thought it would be a good idea for us to cover some safety things in regards to the holidays. So we're going to split this video up into 4 sections. We're going to do domestic violence and the holidays, physical safety at home, safety while traveling, and safe exchange of custody of children. Many of these points have been taken from the National Domestic Violence Hotline's website, as well as my personal experience, and that of other people that I've known or studied. If you've been with an abuser for very long, you're probably already an expert at being able to anticipate his needs and wants ahead of time, almost even before he is aware of them, because that's a safety mechanism. We're going to look at a couple of other ideas to give you some more tools in your tool belt for that. So another thing that you have control over is having a safety plan in place, creating a safety plan so that you have options and making it work to the best of your ability. When you're with an abuser, having control is difficult. They want power and control over everything. So there are things you can't control, for example, what he does or doesn't do, or how he responds to something, but you can control this. One or more safety plan options are available to you. You can email me at staff@aprilhardy.com and I can give you the safety plans that I created, the formats that I created, or you can search online and then just modify. Either way, modify the questions on what you find to fit your situation, to make it as personalized for you as possible. If you don't have access to that for some reason, then just think ahead. Okay, what would I do in this situation? What would I do in this situation? What are things that I can control in this situation? In fact, after you write out your safety plan, and if you write it out, you want to make sure that you store it in a place where your abuser is not likely to find it, or that can be dangerous too. But after you write it out, it's a good idea to go through it in your mind anyway, as clearly as you can. They've done studies on this. The brain does not know the difference between what you think about and what you actually experience. It considers it all experience. So the more in depth and in detail you can think about these things, the more your brain thinks you've already experienced them. So it's not as big of a deal if you actually end up having to go through it. Your brain's like, oh, we already got this. We already know. And in a crisis situation, if you have already thought about what would be the most scary, the most terrible things that could happen, and then what do I do in those situations, the more that you go through those in your mind, in my opinion, the added bonus is that you are less likely to be taken by surprise and be in shock if that actually happens, because your brain's like, we've already done this before. And that can buy you the seconds that you need to be able to react and respond to be able to have a better chance at being safe, to have a better chance of surviving. One more tip, it might go without saying, but I'm going to throw it in here anyway. Financial stress causes non-abusive couples to fight. So it can be a trigger for people in abusive relationships. That being said, I would recommend that you find out what resources are available in your area locally that might be able to help cushion that trigger. So like United Way gives Christmas presents to low-income families, to the children of low-income families. There are other places that will give out Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas dinners. There are things that you can do to make this holiday season a little bit less stressful in that respect, and that might provide a better holiday for you entirely. You, your kids, your significant other. So look and see what resources are available to you. Some people just don't know they exist. Some people, it's a pride thing, but really it's limiting the stress and the drama and potentially the trauma from the holiday season is worth it. Before we move on, if you are not the survivor, but you're a family or friend of a survivor, I just want to acknowledge that it's difficult to watch somebody that you love hurt. I get that. And it can be really frustrating, especially if they've been with this abuser for a while and maybe you have mentioned that you think that it's a bad idea, but you need to realize that you don't have control over the choices that they make. That will help you to have a better holidays. And then the best thing that you can do for them is offer to be there, offer to help them, and then let them make those decisions. Most survivors, what they really want is for somebody to listen without judgment. Can you be that for your loved one this year? And then if and when they get to the point where they want to leave, where they're ready to leave, then help them with that. If you can, that's fantastic. But don't push. They need to come to that decision. There's a whole lot of factors that you may or may not even be aware of. Be there for them. And know that I know it's hard for you. So first of all, let me just throw out there that having a safety plan in place is important no matter where you are or what's going on. It really is. So we're just going to put that out there now. Now, home has been called the most dangerous place for women, and I believe that that is internationally. So according to the Bay Area Women's Center, most domestic violence incidents occur between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. And I would say that that follows suit with intimate partner homicide. That doesn't mean that things don't happen outside of that time range. Obviously they can, but the bulk of them tend to happen at night, through the night, early morning. Those are the real danger times. And they say that 60% of domestic violence incidents happen in the home. Statistically, kitchens and bathrooms are the most dangerous rooms in a home, period, no matter who you are. For intimate partner homicide threat, I would say those things, those rooms definitely, and I would add the master bedroom or your bedroom. So let's consider the threats that might be in those areas, and maybe you can then brainstorm what you can do during the holidays to make these safer. Okay? Number 1, the kitchen. I don't know about you, but the first harmful thing that I think of in the kitchen is knives. So I don't know if you can relocate the knives temporarily, if you can move all but the one that you're going to use for the turkey. Also, keep in mind burning hot things, blunt objects like fire extinguishers or meat mallets, etc., and poison in the food in the back of your mind. Those things are significantly less common, but it's still an option. Bathrooms. Now, it seems to be natural within us almost that if we're being chased by somebody who's trying to attack us, we tend to run to the bathroom. It's like this little cubby that feels like it might be safe. But the problem with bathrooms is that there's usually only one entrance and therefore only one exit. And the lock on the door for the bathroom is only going to keep somebody out who's actually going to respect it, except for maybe for small children. It's not going to keep an angry, violent predator out.
Came back to the bathroom where I was and told me to stop screaming, told me to shut up, and then proceeded to reach with his fingers and ripped my tongue halfway out.
After that, Carly says she blacked out.
And you're going to have nowhere to go if they trap you in the bathroom. Don't go in the bathroom to try to get away. The bedroom. I would say 3 things that end up being most common for intimate partner homicides are stabbings, shootings, and choking. If an abuser has a firearm, they're more than likely going to try to have it with them most of the time, which is going to include in the bedroom. And given the time frame that these things most commonly happen, you're looking at fights before you go to bed, while you were asleep something happens, or you never actually went to sleep because you were fighting all night.
Started calling me names like an F and B, C word, and then he proceeded to tell his friends that if they ever wanted to F me, here was their opportunity.
It wasn't the first time Carly says her boyfriend had verbally abused her or even hit her. She says she tried to stop the verbal attack by just going to bed. This time, though, that only made things worse.
He ran back to our room and locked our door and started to choke me in my sleep.
The other threat in a bedroom is choking. Choking, also known as strangulation, is a huge danger for women. In fact, if you've been choked by him and he didn't kill you this time, you're significantly more likely to be murdered by him at some point. That's like one of the last straws before you die at his hands. And you can be choked by him and think that you've survived it and you're okay, and then die later from complications. If you want to know more about strangulation and choking, you can watch this video that I did previously on that. If you have kids in the home, I want to give you some tips for keeping them safe. Also, teach them when, who, and how to contact in an emergency. This can include friends, family, community resources, neighbors, etc. If possible, instruct them on how to leave the home when the situations get violent and establish where they can go ahead of time. You can create a safety plan for them so that they know where they can go ahead of time, and you've contacted those people and those people know what to do if the kids come to them. This can be a very much more thought out thing than most people do, because most people try to handle all of this by themselves. And it's something you have control over, and it can be freeing to know, if this situation turns ugly, my kids can go here. And they know they can go here, and those people know what to do if they show up there. There's safety in that. Okay? If leaving the home isn't an option, if they're too young, for example, identify a room in the house where they can go if they are feeling unsafe, and something that they can focus on that is calming and provides comfort. Maybe they have a special toy that they take with them, or there's a special toy that's there, a blanket that's there, something that's soothing and comforting for a small child. Maybe this goes without saying, but instruct them to stay out of areas that we just talked about. Don't go to the kitchen, don't go in the bathroom, don't go in mom and dad's room. Teach them not to intervene on your behalf if things get violent. Teach them that they need to be the child and they need to go for help if they can, but not to try to save you, because the likelihood is they're going to get hurt or killed. And I would add to that also, if they're old enough to understand, talk to them about what they should do if the perpetrator gets you and tries to use you against them. And consider what you're going to do if the perpetrator gets them and uses them against you, or one sibling against another sibling. Those are like horrible, horrible situations. But those are areas where safety planning is important, because if you don't have an established plan, everybody could die. And then last but not least, it's not a bad idea to make a plan just in case your kids tell your abuser what your safety plan is. And it's important to remember not to blame them for their responses to your abuser's behavior, because oftentimes they're victims too. Those abusers know how to manipulate them or threaten them to get the information that they're looking for. So, you got to weigh whether or not it's a good idea to involve your kids, or you involve your kids in a safety plan and then you have a backup plan. Safety while traveling. Traveling is a common part of holiday plans. It makes sense that if you're being abused, you're not going to want to be stuck in an enclosed space like a car or a plane with somebody who scares you. However, one bonus of traveling somewhere for Thanksgiving is that if your abuser uses substances, you can ask the person ahead of time where you're going to require that no substances be used while they're there. While it might be a whole lot more difficult for you to tell your significant other who's abusive that they can't have alcohol in their own home, for example, they might respect somebody else's home and the rules there. Alcohol and substances do not cause domestic violence. That is a misunderstanding, but they can and do make them worse. So one good way to make things safer this holiday season is to limit it if possible. The National Domestic Violence Hotline says also to consider asking your host to separate you if you are concerned about sleeping near your abuser. Maybe they can create sleeping situations that are like men over here, women over here, or children, boys and girls, whatever. But I think that if you're to that point in your relationship, that's a very temporary fix, and you should probably be figuring out how you're going to get out of that situation, out of that relationship, unless it's some kind of a special circumstance. I would encourage you to seek help in that regard. Finally, I just want to make you aware that abuse is a power and control thing. So your abuser or somebody in an unhealthy relationship might try to exert control and power over you over the holidays by not allowing you to be alone with your family and friends, or to be alone by yourself So be aware of those control tactics ahead of time. It can be helpful to brainstorm ideas for how you might be able to get some alone time. For example, you can help somebody with holiday plans, or you can go Christmas shopping, or you can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline for other creative ideas on how to go about that. 1-800-799-7233. In my experience, they have to be creative, or else they don't like you to be alone or to be away from them for any amount of time. Safe custody exchange of children. Last but not least, let's look at exchanging custody of children safely. Many survivors who did leave their abusers have been put into the position of having to watch their children leave with their abuser, with somebody who they know is dangerous, and that can be a terrible situation. Let's look at planning for unsupervised visits and planning safe custody exchanges. Planning for unsupervised visits. Create a safety plan for your children and with them if they're old enough to be able to know what they're doing, to be able to help for when they're unsupervised with your abuser. So they have a safety plan at home and they have an alternate safety plan for when they're with that other parent. If children are old enough, brainstorm with them to come up with ways that they can stay safe using the same model that they use at your house. Help them to identify where they can get to a phone, who they can contact, how they can leave the house, and where they can go if they're in danger. If possible, give your kids a phone to take with them to call emergency services. That cell phone does not have to have service. It just has to have a charged battery, and they can dial 911 with no service. The National Domestic Violence Hotline says, avoid exchanging custody at your home or your partner's home. Meet in a public place like a restaurant, store, or other area with visibility. In my city, the police station has in its parking lot a couple of parking places that are monitored constantly by video surveillance. Those places are designated specifically for things like this, so that you can park there, your abuser can park there, kids can get transferred, everything is watched and monitored and recorded. That would be my recommendation for you to find out if your city has something like that first. And then if that's not an option, go somewhere like Walmart's parking lot, which has video surveillance. That is probably not going to keep you safe. It will potentially keep evidence so that if something happens later, the safest thing is going to be the police station. But Walmart or something like it, there's so many Walmarts out there. If there's not a Walmart where you live, somewhere that has some type of video security surveillance is the best option. If it's possible, having a family member or a friend who is the same sex as you make that exchange on your behalf, that's a good option too. You don't want, as a woman, to send your guy friend to take your kids to your ex-guy. That is going to be triggering for them. So you want them to be the same sex. Obviously, if you're homosexual, that creates a problem, and then you might want to switch that up. You're going to know your significant other or your ex best. Plan accordingly. The hotline also suggests that you bring a family or a friend member with you to make custody exchanges, but I have reported on intimate partner homicides where both in one situation, everybody dies, including the friends or family members that come with. In another situation, the ex kills that person, but they don't kill the people that are with them. But those people aren't able to stop them from killing the victim. So I don't recommend that you take somebody with you unless it's law enforcement. If you need to have law enforcement come with you or be there to supervise an exchange, they'll do that. Call them and ask for that. But don't have your mom or Aunt Sally come with you, because they're not necessarily going to be able to do anything, and you may be putting their life in danger too. Another suggestion is to find other ways of doing custody exchanges. Like, for example, one way of doing it would be for you to drop them off at school and your abuser to pick them up from school. That way there's very little chance of you guys actually interacting. I know somebody who does this. It seems to work fairly well for them. I know somebody else who only communicates through a specific app. And it's not a social media app. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I believe that it is created for this purpose. And so he can only communicate through text. It limits how abusive he's able to be. He still certainly tries, but it protects her from, he can't scream at her. She doesn't have to see his face. He can't use intimidation tactics other than just through text messaging. And then they can talk about the kids, but she can limit it. Our conversation is only limited to talking about the kids. You don't get to talk to me about anything else. And she has more control there. So both of those are options. And there may be others, of course, that I don't know about. If you know of others, please list them in the comments. It's good for people to have options, because one thing may work for this person but not this person, and vice versa. And then finally, emotions are important to consider here, both yours and your kids. As far as kids go, some children haven't experienced the abusers being violent firsthand. Sometimes they think that this parent is fantastic. They're amazing. You're the parent who has structure and rules and worries all of the time. And they're the fun one that doesn't have to deal with things like that. In fact, they may even be extra fun because they're trying to manipulate them against you, trying to use the kids as weapons against you. And it can be so hard and suck so much for your kid to tell you, I hate you, but I love daddy. That's normal. It doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. In fact, it probably means that you're a good parent and that they're using the kids to manipulate you. I'm sorry for that. Welcome to the club. You're not alone. And this is a good time to lean on friends or other support networks who can tell you that. You're not alone. You're not doing it wrong. Sometimes it really helps to have other people validate that. I've been there. I sympathize. I get it. It's hard. Some children, on the other hand, won't want to go with their parent. They may be afraid. Not as much as the previous situation sucks, this one sucks so much worse. It is so hard to peel your child off of you and force them to go with somebody that they're afraid of, because you have to by law. Arm them with a safety plan that they can have in place when they're apart from you. That's a start. And maybe come up with some kind of a special ritual that the two of you can do, or however many of you can do when they get back to you, that's going to help them to feel loved, to feel safe, and to feel seen. Brainstorm that. Let me know ideas that you have for things like that. What can you do in the meantime after you drop your kids off or transfer your kids in situations like we've talked about either way, that is going to take care of you and your emotions in the meantime? Who can you call? Where can you go? What can you do to keep yourself busy, keep your mind off of things? Personally, I think prayer is always good. You can be praying for them while they're away. We covered a lot of tips in this video. I hope that you find it helpful. If there are tips that I didn't cover here, but you feel comfortable sharing with other people, please do that in the comments, because the more that people know, the better it is for them. If you don't feel safe doing it yourself, maybe you can enlist somebody else to comment on it for you. I don't tell everybody every safety tip that I have, or which ones in particular I use, etc. I'm very general, so I understand the fear there and the need to be safe. Until I see you again, please stay safe.